Hershman. I'm a short story writer and poet, and I have had 2 collections of short stories published. I'm also right now doing a PhD in creative writing, working on a book-length creative work inspired by particle physics. I wrote when I was a kid, and then there was a long gap where I got diverted towards science. I was a science journalist for many years, so I was writing, but it took a long time to get back to writing fiction, which was my first love. I think when you start looking for ideas, you realise that they're everywhere around you. I listen to people, I spend a lot of time sitting in cafes just watching, and I think a lot of it is observing, noticing everything that's going on that people are in too much of a hurry to see, that people dash past. So I take notes a lot, but also I think it's like a muscle. When you start looking for ideas and when you start writing, it just becomes more flexible and you see things everywhere and you write more and more. So even though I was terrible at science and I couldn't be a scientist, I think science is such a rich source of inspiration for any kind of artist at all. And a lot of people are frightened of science. They think they have to understand it, they have to know it in order to use it in their fiction or poetry. And that's simply not true. You can just take it and run with it. For example, some of the words and the vocabulary of science are absolutely beautiful. And so I often use science as inspiration for fiction and for poetry. Poetry is quite a new passion and I'm absolutely loving it, and I'm finding that writing poems is an entirely different process from writing short stories for me. Short stories happen for me when my fingers are moving, when I'm typing or when I'm writing, but poetry is happening for me out loud. I'm actually writing things out loud. So it's just absolutely fascinating. What I love about short stories is that they're short. The whole beauty of the short story for me is that you know when you start it that you're going to finish it. You're going to finish reading it in 15 minutes or in 5 minutes. And if it's a really great short story, that in that 15 minutes or 5 minutes, it's like a slap in the face. You can be a different person after reading a short story than you were before reading it, and it's just in the space of 15 minutes. And that's what I love about it. It's not wonderful despite the fact that it's short. The best short story writers use the form to tell a story you can only tell in that length, and not a word is wasted. And that's what I love about the short story. I have never ever had writer's block. Maybe I'm lucky, I don't know. I think reading for me is the thing that I couldn't do without, and that's the single biggest source of inspiration for me, is reading anything and everything. And I take notes a lot and I have notebooks, and it wasn't something I always did, but I think that's a very good thing to carry a notebook around with you. Firstly, it makes you feel like a writer, and I think it does help to stimulate. I first started reading short stories by reading Roald Dahl's short stories, and so many of us were inspired by him. Ali Smith is a huge inspiration. I'd say firstly read short stories, not to see what a short story has to be, but to see all the things a short story can be. And I think every great short story writer takes the form and does something new with it that only they could do. But the reading's got to come first. Otherwise, a short story is not just a set of words of a certain length. It needs to have some kind of a shape to it. It needs to have a story. Don't let anything put you off, and don't listen to people who say there are rules for writing, because for me that's the thing that shuts me down. There are no rules, there's no one way of doing it. In one person, I have several different ways of writing, so if there's no one way for me, there's no one way for you. Just go for it.